This is Midnight Audiobooks, a dark fantasy story. Listen and let the night speak. The Ember of Orenthal, Book 1, Chapter 5, The Cost of Fire. The lower gates of Virul did not fall all at once. They failed in stages, metal screaming as it bent, stone groaning under impossible pressure, runes flaring and guttering like dying stars. Cale felt each impact in his bones, as though the mountain itself were shuddering through him. Ryden led him through the inner halls at a half-run. Warriors streamed past in the opposite direction, faces set, weapons drawn, eyes hard with resolve. The air was thick with dust and the metallic tang of blood. "Focus," Ryden said over the din. "If you let the ember lead, it will burn everything, including you." Kyle nodded, jaw clenched. The warmth in his chest surged with every step, hungry and impatient. They reached a narrow chamber overlooking the lower approach. Through a fractured slit in the stone, Cale saw them, Olg advancing in tight formation, their grey hides etched with crude sigils glowing a sickly blue. Between them moved figures cloaked in ash, their hands wreathed in cold flame. Blue. The sight pulled at Cale like a hook. "Not yet," Ryden warned, reading the shift in his posture. "You answer when I say." Aelwyn appeared beside them, blood streaking her cheek. "We can hold for minutes," she said flatly. "No more." Cale swallowed. "Then tell me what to do." Aelwyn studied him, then pointed to a ring carved into the floor. "Stand there. Anchor yourself to the stone. If you move, if you reach, without permission, you will tear the mountain open." Cale stepped into the ring. The pressure returned immediately, heavy and absolute. He closed his eyes, breathing steadily, feeling the cold bite of stone through his boots. The ember raged, battering against restraint like a storm against a wall. "Now," Aelwyn said softly, "open a door, not a flood." Cale focused on the memory of control, on Ryden's voice, on the rhythm of breath, on the weight of his own body. He did not unleash the ember. He shaped it. A thread of heat slipped free, thin and precise, coiling outward like a living wire. It touched the air beyond the wall and held. The Olg nearest the gate faltered. Aelwyn's eyes widened. Again. Kyle drew the thread wider. The heat sharpened, brightened, then split. 2 lines, then 4, each anchored to his breath. The blue flame wielders recoiled, their cold fire flickering erratically. Ryden exhaled slowly. "Good. Hold it." The mountain shook. A roar thundered up the corridor as the lower gate finally gave way. Olg surged forward, claws scraping stone. Steel met flesh. Shouts echoed. "Release!" Aelwyn commanded. Kyle released. Fire did not explode. It answered. Crimson light surged along the threads Cale had woven, snapping into a controlled arc that swept the approach clean. Snow hissed into steam. Stone blackened. The Olg fell back, howling, driven by heat that burned without wildness. Cale staggered, vision swimming. The ember recoiled, then bit back. Pain flared through his chest, sharp and intimate, as if the fire itself demanded payment. He dropped to one knee, gasping. "Enough!" Ryden barked, hauling him back. "Anchor!" Kyle forced himself upright, teeth clenched, blood pounding in his ears. The warmth dimmed, sulking. Aelwyn turned away, already issuing orders. Rotate the line. Buy time. Time? Kale had learned in that moment exactly what time cost. They retreated deeper as the battle spread. Verul's halls rang with steel and shouted commands. Kale moved on instinct, supporting where he could, shaping the ember into brief, careful responses, never again letting it surge unchecked. Between clashes, Ryden pulled him into a narrow alcove. "You felt it," Ryden said quietly. Kale nodded. "It hurt." "It always does," Ryden replied. "Power that doesn't hurt you is power you don't understand." A horn sounded. 3 short blasts, sharp and urgent. Aelwyn appeared again, eyes blazing. "The blue bearer is down." Kale's heart lurched. "The man from the chamber?" She nodded. "He held the breach alone. Bought us minutes." "Where is he?" Kale asked. Aelwyn hesitated. "Below, near the ice bridge." Kale was already moving. Ryden cursed under his breath and followed. The ice bridge spanned a chasm that vanished into darkness, its surface cracked and treacherous. Blue flames scorched the far end, the stone blackened and smoking. They found him kneeling at the center, one hand braced against the ice, the other extinguished, fingers raw and shaking. His breathing was shallow. Kale dropped beside him. "You said I'd need restraint." The man smiled faintly. "And you're learning it faster than I did." "Why help me?" Kale demanded. "Why any of this?" The man's gaze drifted to the chasm below. "Because once I chose wrong." A shadow loomed at the far end of the bridge, taller than the rest, its form crowned with jagged horns etched in blue sigils. It raised a hand, cold flame gathering. Ryden stepped forward, blades ready. "We don't have time." The man looked back to Kale. "Then choose." Kale closed his eyes. He felt the ember, angry, brilliant, eager. He felt the mountain, unyielding, ancient, patient. He chose neither. He chose between. Kale stepped onto the bridge. The horned figure hurled its flame. Kale caught it. Not with force, with shape. The blue fire twisted, pulled thin, bled into harmless light that scattered across the ice like sparks. Kale advanced, breath steady, pain blooming but contained. He raised a hand and released a narrow, focused lance of crimson heat. It struck true. The horned figure reeled, sigils cracking, flame guttering. With a final inhuman cry, it toppled backward into the chasm, swallowed by darkness. Silence fell. Kale dropped to one knee, shaking. Ryden was there instantly, steadying him. "Easy." The man with the blue flame exhaled, relief softening his features. "A wall," he murmured. "You chose to be a wall." Kyle met his gaze. "And you?" The man smiled. "I chose to teach." His eyes closed. The blue flame faded. Dawn found Verul standing. Scarred, cracked, unbroken. Kale stood at the outer wall, watching the light creep across the snow. His chest ached, a deep, lingering soreness that promised weeks of recovery. Aelwyn joined him. "You paid the cost," she said, "and you didn't flinch." Kyle looked down at his hands. "Will it always hurt?" "Yes," she replied. And one day, it won't scare you. That's when you must be careful. Ryden rested a hand on Kale's shoulder. You did well. Below them, the mountain breathed. And within Kale, the ember burned, smaller now, quieter, but undeniably his. The mountain did not celebrate its survival. Verul stood in the pale light of morning, its walls cracked, its stones blackened, its courtyards littered with the quiet aftermath of battle. Smoke rose in thin, stubborn lines from scorched snow, drifting upward to vanish among the clouds. Kale felt older than he had the night before. Ryden joined him, his armor stripped and bandaged where it had been torn. He looked tired in a way Kale had never seen before. Not exhausted, but weighed down. You should rest, Ryden said. Kale shook his head. I'm afraid if I stop, I'll feel everything. Ryden allowed himself a faint smile. You will anyway. They watched in silence as Aelwyn addressed the gathered defenders. There was no speech of victory, no praise. Only orders, repairs, rotations, watch schedules. Life continued. Eventually, Aelwyn approached Kale. You will not train today, she said, or tomorrow. Kale stiffened. I'm fine. You're functional, she corrected. That's not the same thing. She studied him carefully. What you did at the bridge, few could have done it. Fewer still without losing themselves. Kyle lowered his gaze. It still hurts. Aelwyn nodded once. Good. The burial took place at noon. They carried the blue bearer to a high ledge overlooking the valley, where the wind was strongest and the snow unbroken. No pyre was lit. Instead, they laid him upon the stone and traced runes around his body, symbols of sealing and release. Kale stood apart, the amber pendant heavy against his chest. Ryden spoke the final words. They were not loud, but they carried. He bore restraint when others bore fire. He chose limits when the world demanded power. The wind rose, lifting ash and snow alike. The body shimmered once, blue light folding inward, then faded, leaving only the stone behind. Kale's throat tightened. He saved us, Kale said quietly. Ryden nodded. And he knew the cost. That night, Kale dreamed without fire. He stood instead in a long corridor of shadow, its walls lined with doors. Some were charred black, others glowed faintly. One at the far end was sealed with blue sigils cracked down the center. A voice echoed, not commanding, not angry. Patient. You have learned to stop. Kale turned, but no one stood behind him. Next, the voice continued. You must learn when to move. He reached for the nearest door and woke. 3 days passed. Kale's body healed slowly, stubbornly. Each breath still carried a dull ache. Each time he reached inward, the ember answered softly, like a creature learning trust. On the 4th day, Aelwyn summoned him. Raiden waited beside her, arms crossed. We are sending you beyond the mountain, Aelwyn said without preamble. Kale's heart jumped. Alone? Raiden shook his head. With me. And others. Aelwyn continued. The attack was not random. The Olg moved with purpose. Coordination. direction. From whom? Kale asked. Aelwyn's eyes hardened. That is what you will learn. She placed a folded map into Kyle's hands. There are villages to the east reporting strange lights, blue fire. Survivors speak of a figure moving among the ruins. Kyle swallowed. Another bearer? Perhaps, Aelwyn said, or something worse. Ryden stepped forward. This will not be training. This will be consequence. Kale nodded. I understand. Aelwyn studied him one last time. Do not seek to be powerful, she said. Seek to remain whole. They departed at dawn. The gates of Verul opened silently, the mountain releasing them without ceremony. Kale glanced back only once, committing the fortress to memory. Below, the world stretched wide and uncertain. As they descended, Ryden spoke quietly. You chose to be a wall. Remember that. Kale adjusted his cloak, the pendant warm against his skin. I will, he said, until the world gives me no choice. Ahead of them, clouds gathered on the horizon, dark and restless. And somewhere beyond the hills, fire burned again, calling, waiting, patient. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, take a moment and let it settle. New chapters will follow. When the night is quiet, the story continues. This is Midnight Audiobooks.